Tuesday, and welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I'm Mary Morton, and along with my buddy Chad Fellers, we have casual talk about the challenges and successes in medical affairs with the most exciting and impactful professionals in pharma. As always, we have another great one for you today, so stick around.
Welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles. I am your host, Chad Fellers, with my nifty sidekick, Mary Morton. How are you, Mary?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
That didn't sound very authentic, Mary. I'm doing great. How are you doing? You should be excited. We get to talk again.
I know.
It's been a long time since we last chatted.
Has it, though?
I mean, a minute seems like a lifetime. A minute seems like a lifetime, Mary, when we don't get to stay connected. Besides, you usually always keep me in line, making sure I'm getting things done, etc. So,
somebody's got to.
I guess. Mary, I'm really excited about today, our another conversation. We've got so many amazing guests that get to learn from, and this one is one of my favorite friends from a recent job that I had. We worked at the same company, but I can't wait to hear her story a little bit. I'll tease our listeners real quick. I don't know if you ever watched Big Brother. Have you ever watched Big Brother, Mary?
Are you joking?
No,
Big Brother,
I'm being serious.
the TV show?
Yeah.
Yes. Regularly.
That's one of the few things that we'll sit down and watch. Anyway, the whole phrase "expect the unexpected."
Oh, yeah.
That's a great thing. Always twists and turns in this show, and that's what I think about when I think about the conversation we're going to have today: is expecting the unexpected. With that, Mary, why don't you introduce our guest for today?
Everybody, Megan Vignos, a PhD in cellular and molecular biology with a focus in neuroscience. She did this through a joint program with Kent State University and the Cleveland Clinic, where she was studying radiological and histological characterization of myelocortical multiple sclerosis. And
Say that 10 times fast.
If you think I've just said that for the very first time ever and it just rolled off my tongue, thank you. She quickly moved from academia to industry into an MSL role at Biogen in MS, obviously. So she quickly was promoted through the ranks and in 5 years, moved into a senior MSL, AD interferon lead, U.S. medical director for the MS franchise. She was appointed the head of scientific and value communications for North America Medical at Biogen, leading a team supporting medcoms, pubs, value communications for MS, SMA, Friedreich ataxia, ALS, postpartum depression, Alzheimer's disease, and if that weren't enough, the pipeline as well. So when Megan is not busy with work, I don't know, based on that, when she's
I don't know how she has time outside of that, but go ahead.
She's hanging out with her husband and her 3 kiddos, playing board games, hiking, exploring the aquariums and the zoos. And if she has any free time left, you can find her on or around a stage.
Stage?
Yes, I know.
Tell me more.
I know that was like going to be one of my hot seat questions. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, first I have to thank you both. I'm so excited to be chatting with you guys today. As to in or around the stage, I have done a lot of theater, or I attend a lot of theater. So I've done some musical theater, some straight theater, some opera in my past. So I love performing, and it's one of my fun, creative sides to balance out some of that nerdy side.
I love it.
We're both just sitting here, if you're not watching this, with our mouths kind of open. I did not know this about you. So what's your favorite Broadway musical?
I really love Les Mis. The music is just so powerful, so emotional.
Mm-hmm.
that, it's one of my favorites. But I will see it all. So I'm not picky.
It's my favorite too. We are, same birthday, everything. This is great.
We are twins, Chad.
We are twins.
I just heard a Les Mis reference when I was in my 7th rewatch of Ted Lasso this weekend. So
no, I'm glad you were able to connect those, Megan or Mary. That was so great.
Ted and leadership. I feel like it's a great segue.
It totally is. Well, one of my hot seat questions I was going to ask you is, tell us something that very few people may know about you, and I would say that probably answers that one. And what a great extra special ability to help you be really good at medical affairs and communicating with people on or off a stage. So one of our other questions that we've been asking lately, and it was Chad's idea, and I really, really like it. So everybody's getting it. I don't know when I'm going to stop asking this question, but if you watch baseball or anything, what would your walk-up song be?
Ooh, yeah, this is always a fun question. I would probably say Confidence by Demi Lovato. Because I feel like it causes you to have confidence by listening to the song. And so whatever you're going to do after that, like, you're fired up and ready to go.
Yeah, and there's you have to strut to that song.
Yeah, you do. You just naturally kind of build yourself up with that song. So
that's got to be Chad's new walk-up song.
I love to sway my hips. I'm not going to lie. So
who doesn't?
Who doesn't? So I'm learning so much. So Mary, just a side note, Megan probably doesn't know this, or maybe I did share with it. Now I feel so much more connected. I was so intimidated by it. All these people these guests that have become my friends, they're so much smarter than me, Mary. You think about these degrees that they have and all this kind of stuff. Talk about being intimidated. So I just try to make them laugh and pretend that I'm halfway as smart as they are. So, but Megan's so down to earth, and I think the listeners are really going to love the conversation that we have today. So, Megan, we typically start out our conversations with the key takeaways for listeners, just to kind of set up the show and make them want to hang around even longer if they don't want to just hear just a bunch of banter at the very beginning, which I think that they really do. But nevertheless, do you have any key takeaways for the day?
I definitely have some key takeaways. I would say the first is that an unexpected role, although it may not be, your first choice, it actually may be the role that you need. So give it the opportunity to show you that it could be something pretty spectacular. The second thing I would say is that there's always something that each role can teach you. And so you have the opportunity to drive and find the growth within an unexpected role. So that would be the second thing. And then the third thing I would say is that what you are building within a role and within yourself can really change your trajectory overall. And so be open to that and see where this change could actually take you.
This is good. And that ends today's, no, I'm just joking. Really, this is a fascinating conversation. I'm just thinking back to, Mary's introduction of your bio and just thinking about your growth specifically at Biogen. Let's unpack this a little bit. We're talking about how this role even came about. So I know that you were in an AD position and then you transitioned, but why don't you start right there and share a little bit about your journey in more detail?
Yeah, sure. So, when I joined Biogen, I was an MSL and I loved that role. But after a year and a half, I kind of started looking around is this what I want to do? And I kept looking at the medical director's office going I'm just so fascinated by the strategy. And so, that's where I kind of focused in and said, this is where I want to go. So once I moved into the medical director's office as an associate medical director and then promoted to a medical director, I was I've done it. I'm here. Like, I loved the role. And so I couldn't see doing anything else. Like, I was just trying to be the best medical director I could be. Hadn't really considered other roles beyond that because I was just enjoying it so much. So, as I'm doing this role, we hear Biogen is going to go through a reorg. And of course, those are always scary. You never know what to expect. And so, expect the unexpected. I naturally was like, okay, well, I expect change. I don't know what this is going to look like. And so then that's exactly what happened. The leadership team came to me and said, we are now going to appoint you as the head of scientific and value communications. And I said, what? What? Because it was not a role that I was looking for. It was not a role that I had necessarily been interested up to that point. And so I was like, I know nothing about SciComms. Like, I know I had partnered with my SciComms teams, so I had a vague idea of what they did, but I was not at all prepared for that change. That was not where I thought I was going to go. So it was a definite unexpected turn of events for me.
Chad told me that you guys talked about this a little bit and that you had kind of like a name for how you approach this situation, and how you got your mind right around all of this. It was called, what is the 3 P's? Mind your P's?
Mind your P's.
Okay.
Yeah, Mary, mind your P's.
I'm sorry, Chad. I didn't remember exactly how you told me.
It's fine. No, you're good.
I would love to hear you share more about what that meant to you.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a leader, because this role meant that I was going to be leading a team, I realized pretty quickly I needed to get myself in the right place to take on this leadership role before I really, set the ground for my team. So the mind your P's are really 3 P's. There's pause, and then process, and then plan to proceed. So the pause is take a deep breath. This change has happened to you, whether you wanted it to or not, it's here. And so take a deep breath, give yourself some grace, right? And then process through the emotions that you're going to have, whether they're negative or positive. Both are okay. Maybe you have both. And really process all of those emotions, those thoughts, those reactions. Because if you don't do that, you're going to process them on the job, and everybody else is going to be experiencing them with you, which is not what you want as a leader. You don't want everybody else experiencing your shit. Right?
And then how many people did you have that were going to be working for you at this time? I mean, what was your audience of how you were going to react to all of this?
Yeah. So at that point, I was going to have a team of 3 that were underneath me. And 2 of them were individuals that were known to me. And then I actually had an open role, Mary. What is that? So I'm going to have to fill a role when other people have been losing roles. So you can imagine what that's going to look like. A lot of people are going to be, interested in this role because they have lost the role that they were currently in. So I knew I really needed to get myself in the right place. So that way, everybody else that is coming in and asking questions about this open role could see where my leadership was, could see the direction of where I was taking this team, and to understand what this role was going to be. And so that's where, if I had not processed my feelings and been prepared to show up as a leader, you're not going to be successful, and you're not going to attract the right talent for those open roles, or really to ground the team that you have in where the direction you want to go. And so that's where processing, you got to do that. I know it's easy to think we can skip this, I'll deal with it as I go. But I think it does everybody a disservice if you don't do that first.
So how did you come up with the 3 Ps?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I came up with the 3 Ps kind of on the fly. It wasn't something that like I knew of ahead of time and I was like, oh, I'm going to gracefully move through this. No. It was down and dirty. But in the moment I knew from a lot of like leadership courses that I had taken that I needed to take a pause. And then I also just kind of knew about myself that I needed to process what was going on, because if I didn't, I knew I was going to struggle to move forward. And so it was kind of through different learnings that I had done up to that point. And also, we work in industry. There's changes happening all the time. You practice this all the time. So it was more of just applying what I've already done into this situation. And so it was like, okay, Megan, I need to sit down and feel the feelings. And not to say that it happened all overnight. It didn't. Yeah. It definitely took me a couple of days. I found out on a Wednesday. And honestly, it wasn't until Monday that I was like, okay, how am I going to move forward? And that's when I started to move into that like thought process around, now, how do I plan to proceed? Right. And how do I move myself and my team forward? And so it wasn't until after that I was like, oh, these 3 P's, mind your P's, like, obviously. So it wasn't something that I had planned, but it's something that kind of came out as I reflected on my journey. And so, yeah, it took me a couple of days. And I will be honest, it's not like it was something where like I processed it and I was done, right? But I did most of the work up front. And there were times when people would ask me a question that may bring me back to that, like, oh, I'm really frustrated. I want to be back in my medical director role where I know what to do, right? And so, you may have to reprocess things along the journey. But if you've done a lot of that work up front, I think that's where you build some resiliency and you're able to process it much faster when things come up that maybe circle you back to that, man, okay, I'm in this role that I didn't really choose for myself.
So you mentioned, Megan, that you had 3 people, or 3 positions rather, when you started the team that reported to you. 2 were filled and 1 was open. You also said this was a new area for you as well too. So talk a little bit about leading or processing like you did the 3 Ps in context of leading people who have been in a role and now you are responsible for that role that you have not had any kind of experience. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So one of the things is that we had a global SciComms team that existed before, and this new team of the scientific and value communications within North America was a new build. So we had not existed prior to this reorg. So the 2 people that came to me, one had been working with me previously, but she also did not have scientific and value communication experience. So this was also going to be brand new to her. And then the other individual had value comms experience. So she had been in that type of role for about 6 months prior to this change happening. So generally speaking, we were all pretty new to role. And so it was a change across the board, and also recognizing that both of these individuals had lost team members, right? With the reorg. We had individuals that had been let go from the company, and now they were joining into this new function. So it was a lot of change for them as well. And another reason why like I needed to process my feelings so I could be there empathetically to help them process theirs as they moved through this change in roles for them as well.
So I have kind of a before and after question. So the before question being, what do you think the person who selected you to take on this opportunity, what do you think that they saw in you and said, this is for Megan?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, Mary. It's probably one that I asked myself pretty regularly when I got the role, like, why me? Why did you put me here? And honestly, Mary, I think it's a couple of things. The first is that they needed somebody who could be a strong leader for this team. And so I think my leadership qualities that I bring was something that they saw in me and wanted in this particular role. I think the other thing is that I had a strong strategic mindset. Yeah. And so I was good at taking in a lot of information, processing it, and saying, all right, this is where I see we need to move forward. I am making this decision and we are moving forward, and I act upon it quickly. And so I think because this was a new function being put into our North America medical team, they knew they needed somebody who could identify, where are the gaps, where are there going to be processes that need to be made, and make those decisions and move them forward. And so I think because I had shown those abilities ahead of this, reorg, when they were creating the role, likely that's what they were looking for, was somebody who had those types of skills that they could say, all right, yes, this is going to be new to Megan, but she has enough transferable skills that we think she can be successful here.
So then, how important do you think it is for you to seek out people who have done this kind of a role before, or similar kind of a role, and kind of lean on them or pick their brain and kind of get a little bit of direction or advice or suggestions from them while you're doing, while you're minding your P's, I guess?
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's kind of really that second phase, right? Once you've gone through kind of the P's and started moving yourself forward, that's where you gotta seek to understand really what is this role. And so one of the things that I did first is I went to my boss. I said, okay, you have given me this job. Great.
Wait, you're saying it the very politically correct way on this call, right? You went and asked very politely.
Oh, what exactly? I did not ask politely. I was like, I need to see a job description because I can't understand what I am supposed to do without that job description. So I know you have written one. I need to see it. And so he, very kindly provided it to me. That obviously helped me ground, like, all right, this is an expectation. I also went to leadership and said, am I clear? Is this what you guys are looking for? Is there something else that, isn't within this job description? And, what I am telling you that I think this job is there something else you had expected within this role that I need to be aware of now as I, set up? And so very much asked them to be crystal clear with me on their expectations. And then that's when it was sort of like, Mary, to your point, I went out to the broader network, right? Because like I said earlier, I was not looking for a scientific communications role. So I knew about the team, I'd interacted with the team, but that didn't mean that I actually understood what this type of role meant. So I went both internally and externally. So internally, I did have some global partners that had still remained through our reorg. And I said to them, like, help me understand this role from your perspective, from your, time in role. What is it that you guys really do? And so I could understand from, our company, how do we look at this role, right? So that was the first piece. And then the second piece was I went out externally and I said, all right, who's within my network that I know that does this role? So it was either, past colleagues that I knew had moved into this role. Another thing that I had done is I went on LinkedIn. I said, okay, let me find some people who are maybe one or two, connections from me, reach out and say like, hey, do you have a minute to just chat about this? Like, I want to understand, what does good look like? What are your best practices? And that way it could help me kind of understand like what maybe a industry standard is versus what's a Biogen standard. And then I can kind of identify, well, what do I want to do with this role? And so that's where, reaching out and really finding out those best practices, those policies that are typically done, the, standard operating procedures that everybody does. So that way I can make sure that those are in place for my team in an efficient and effective manner for the way we were going to work moving forward.
So many different things that you, just listening to this, for takeaways. One that comes to mind is just for those out there that are not in quote unquote leadership roles, there's always opportunities to lead where you are, right? I mean, that's one of the ways you demonstrated yourself, Megan, to put you in a position to even be considered for this type of opportunity. You saw beyond just the your core responsibilities as a medical director and the remit that was to be able to be, not that there's not strategies involved with medical director, I don't mean that, but instead of just looking at your individual role, you were always looking up and seeing how things connected together, and keeping a strategic mindset beyond, more from a company mindset than it was just that specific task that you may have been trying to drive, whether it was a real world study, whatever that might look like, right? So I think that's a great application for our listeners out there that are wanting to move into leadership roles beyond just putting something on your IP, but beyond just exceeding expectations in the things, the KPIs that you have, et cetera. All those are great, and those will help set you up to be able to have conversations. But then also, how can you demonstrate your capabilities, your thinking, to leverage those opportunities in an authentic way, but you clearly did that. So that's one thing. The next thing was the networking. I love that idea as well too, being so resourceful. I mean, it makes me think about my first days as an MSL. Like, how would you figure out how to develop your network when you, besides just a KOL list you're given, right? Or maybe you're not even given one. So how do you start think about the different local societies, think about all these different things. How do you get creative to really be able to identify and then establish yourselves? So the idea about LinkedIn was great. I think that's a great application as well, and it makes us think. Quite honestly, this is what we're doing with MSL Lead, right? Is to be able to share experiences and learnings, and allow other leaders to be able to do that as well too, to help kind of advance along. So those are just a few things that I heard out of your response that I think just really impactful. So think about, so this was what, last year, what, a year and a half ago? Is that right?
It was almost 2 years ago.
Almost 2 years ago.
October of 2023. Yeah.
Okay. Talk a little bit, if you want, like any challenges that come to mind that you faced early on, and how did you navigate them? Or, I mean, and it can be a positive experience. It can be it can be one that didn't go so well as well too. I mean, we learn. Sometimes it's so good to learn from people's missteps potentially as well too. So anything you want to share, we'd love to hear.
Definitely. I mean, I think anytime you enter a new role, whether you chose it or not, there are challenges, and they're gonna hit you in the face, right? So one of the challenges that I, identified very early on was there was still a global scientific communications team. They didn't go away. They had become much smaller in their footprint than they had been before. So now I needed to understand, what are they still doing? What's still within their remit? And then where does my team connect in? And I think a lot of people were thinking of our teams as two totally separate teams. And I was like, no, we're an extension of, right? We're a continuation of that global scientific communications team. And so one of the challenges was really helping all the cross-functional partners understand that we're not here to take the work away from you. We're here to partner with you, and you're going to take on some of the work, and we're going to take on some of the work. But, there was, I think, a lot of the initial mindset by those who remained was that, like, who do these, U.S. team members think they are? Like, they've never even been in SciComms. What are they doing here? And they're going to come and take our work, right? And so it was a challenge. And it was something where I had to have a lot of communication with the leadership within scientific communications, so we could really find where are the boundaries. What is the point that this stayed on the global side, and this is something that truly made sense for my team to be kind of the lead on. And so it came with its challenges, right? There was lots of discussion, pushback, and another piece to that was, do we use the same standard operating procedures and policies as the global team, or do we create our own? And there was a strong feeling from the global team, no, you need to use ours. And I said, no, I'm sorry, but we need different efficiencies because we are a different team. And so it was not a popular decision by any means. And it definitely made for some challenges with our partners. But because I communicated very strongly about the needs for this and why this was going to be of benefit for everybody, eventually everybody got on board. But it was a challenge to really communicate between our global partners and my team. And so I had to be clear in my communication upwards and across and down. So that way everybody really heard the same thing. And I had to be very clear to my leadership, when did I need them to step in and support something, because it just required another level of communication from their side.
Change is hard, and especially when you're going from a centralized system to decentralizing, right? And trying to empower the regions, and you didn't even include the component of having to navigate a matrix environment even within the medical directors of each function as well, too, right? Who may be used to driving what content would look like, et cetera. Not that you wouldn't still utilize them as partners, but even just having to let go of maybe previous notions or things like that. So yeah, it was, I remember being a part of
building
some of those
new roles and responsibilities for everyone and creating that, RACI of where are they responsible, where are they accountable. Yeah, I mean, it definitely came with its challenges, Chad, but I think that's where, because I was very clear about what was appropriate for my team to take on and what needed to remain either with the global team or with the medical director's office, it allowed everybody that sense of clarity of okay, we know how we're going to move forward, how we're going to proceed. Again, didn't mean that I was always popular with the decisions that I made, but in the end, everybody was clear on what should be done moving forward.
And that's, I think, maybe we, like Chad said a little bit ago, we have these topics that we discuss, not just to sit around and have a conversation, but it's for other people who find themselves in your shoes one day to learn from your experiences. And I think one of the things I picked up on, and I've heard things go wrong and things go right, and things go great. And I think the thing you talked about so brilliantly is, it's not, I'm the new head honcho here. It's about efficiencies and what makes sense in our ecosystem over here, and what we're not. I'm not trying to be different on purpose. You'll just please trust me on this, and you'll see that it makes sense. And if it doesn't, I'm sure you're if it doesn't, then we can look at doing something differently. But I feel very strongly, I'm confident that this will be the best way to go about this. I think that's a big takeaway there for people who do find themselves in new leadership roles, either that they were expecting or not expecting to get involved in.
Mary, and it's to your point about trust, and I think that's where going to seek to understand from those partners of who have been doing this type of role in the past. I think when they see that you're coming to really understand, to get their input, to hear from them how this has been done, that builds some of that trust. So when you do have to make a decision that says we're going to deviate from the way things that have been done, you have a background of trust to go in on to have that conversation. And so that's where it's like, it's important not only from the standpoint of like, I need to understand this role, but it allows you to start building that relationship with those partners.
Yeah, and these are partners that you've not had relationships with before. They don't know you. I mean, it's not like your peers from within, the U.S. MS, multiple sclerosis medical affairs team. They're like, oh, it's Megan. If she says, then we get it. Of course, that's why we should do it that way. Yeah, you've got a lot of your own like internal intellectual property, I guess, to have to demonstrate.
Definitely.
I think about all the different modes of communication there are now, right? Text, email, all these types of things. And what I heard out of that is it requires intentionality, right? To invest. I mean, just putting it in perspective, there's so many different big rocks. I'm assuming you probably walked into trying to figure out how do I do each one of these. So there's a prioritization component that comes with it. But then you also think about, okay, I got to turn this stuff around fairly quick. So I need to get some things done. It would be easier for me just to bark out or send things via email versus scheduling another 30-minute call on a day full of calls and all these types of things to invest or live meeting, whatever that may look like. Right. But I think you have to do some of those things to really gain some of that rapport and build that credibility and build the trust that that you mentioned. I also think the idea of there's benefits of that. One of them is it helps disarm people that you're engaging as well too, right? I mean, this whole seeking understand or even asking what their input is, not because you're going to incorporate their input necessarily or go that direction, but they can at least feel heard. And if people feel heard, right, they can there's a tendency to being willing to try whatever the direction that you end up going, right? So I heard those things out of you. Am I wrong about that, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think, to your point about the mode of communication, some of these conversations had to be had face to face, right? Because you just need to be able to look the person in the eye and tell them, I hear you, I understand your viewpoint, but this is why I need to do X or Y, right? And I think that's where, like, even within an MSL, there are times where you need to have that communication with like your commercial colleague face to face, because they need to see like the sincerity behind what you're saying, that you're not like kind of jokingly saying this. Like sometimes you just need to have that face to face, or it needs to be with, your physician that you're interacting with. There's just situations where face to face cannot be replaced by, an email. And so that's where really being intentional, to your point about the type of communication that you're bringing forward to have those various types of conversations.
Yeah, I just write that down. I could not agree more. Like being able to be face to face because it's not just locking eyes and hearing the words right in front of you. I mean, there's a vibe that you get from being in the same room, being able to feel like this person is being
or the change in energy. If somebody's changing their energy because like they just feel really, strongly about what they're saying, right? Like sometimes that change in energy can be visual, but you might not have picked it up on, just an audio call, or you might not have picked that up in an email. And so sometimes you just need to have those face-to-face to feel that change in energy coming from somebody, like, oh, they don't like what I am saying, or they really are on board. Great. Like this conversation is easier than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It's hard. I'm thinking even an apology.
Yeah. It's hard to pick up tone, or you can infer tone, right, on text and email and those types of things, and depending on the day or the circumstance, or things that you feel so negatively charged about or whatever, that could really just lead things in the wrong direction and make you have to do more work. So takeaway is to invest time or prioritize certain things, right? Such as relationship development to help advance everyone's cause, right? So, all right, one of your takeaways was around every role teaches you, has something to teach you, and you can gain something from the role. So, talk about what you've been taught in the past almost 2 years now. What have you gained? Other than a new title, right? An extra responsibility and new therapeutic areas, blah, 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 blah. What else? Yeah.
Isn't it always an and? There's
That's
never
right.
never an or. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that has really taught me is like the importance of networking. I think I always knew like, oh, okay, I mean, I got to build my network. It could help me down the road. But I think understanding the broader company, and to your point earlier, Chad, and like the enterprise approach, building out a broader network really helps you be able to identify who are the new partners that maybe you need to be interacting with, or are there partners that you hadn't originally thought would be important to your role, but now, like, as you start to have more conversations with them and see them in a new light, like, oh, I might actually connect with that government affairs person more than I had anticipated in this new role, or some other function within the company. And so I think, it really taught me that networking is so important. Another thing, and this is going to sound ironic, I realize, coming from a communications person, is like the narrative, right? Building up that narrative around what your team can do, what they are not going to do, what you can do within the role, and what you are not going to do within this role, especially if it's a role that has existed previously. Sometimes, like, people are like, well, your predecessor always did X. That's great. I'm not going to do that. And so building up that strong narrative around what you and your team are going to execute on, what they're not going to execute on, what's within their remit and what's not, how to change things as we know. Inevitably, strategy changes, information comes in, and things need to change. And so really, like, communicating what needs to come to you versus what needs to go to your team. And so that communication piece, and just how important it is around, communicating what you and your team are going to do. And then I think from the standpoint of understanding your audience better, I don't think we do this enough. I don't think we are intentional enough about, okay, I am communicating to leadership. What am I really trying to do here? Am I trying to inform them of something? Am I asking them for a decision? Am I just trying to, give them a lay of the land because in the future I do need a decision? I think so many times we just communicate to get it out of our mind, off of our to-do list. But we need to be more intentional about really thinking through what is it that I am trying to get across to my audience, and then making sure that that is actually happening. So many times I think we just write it out and we don't think about the audience and how much they know, what additional context we need. And that's something that, as I have grown in this role, I have realized that I need to spend much more time on than I had been in the past. I would have just fired off the email and gone, all right, moving on with my day. I got other to-do lists too, right? But oftentimes that comes back because I didn't communicate it well enough. And now I've realized just how much I need to stop and be intentional more about my communication.
It's completely transferable to just about any job, right? I mean, even thinking about the MSL role, I'll never forget. I've mentioned this before. The idea of, so many times MSLs will go in and have a rote message that they use all the time. And there was a time that I did that, and I went back to the same provider like 4 months later, and I used kind of the same question I did 4 months prior, and they literally asked me the question, didn't we have this conversation last time? Right. I mean, you versus making impact and understanding like what the specific areas that they need to talk about or that interest them, etc. I mean, taking that time to be intentional, and then even like you said, what it is, the type of information that you're communicating at an executive level is going to be different than what you would to your team, right? As far as the details and all those types of things. So that's really good. That's really good feedback.
Oh, Chad, I hear you. When I was an MSL, like I had it scripted down to a T on like, I talk about this, then I'm going to move to this, right?
Yep.
And did it work? Yeah. Was it as effective as it could have been? Probably not. Had I thought about this back then, I probably would have been a much more effective communicator had I been more mindful of my audience.
Yeah.
I love the part that you were talking about when you were having a meeting with people that they understand the objective at the beginning. If like, is this meeting for me to bring you up to speed on what's going on? Is this meeting for you to provide input or for you to answer my questions? And I have to say that I sometimes go into meetings without having that clearly defined. And, you don't want to say, I don't want your input. That's not what this is about. I'm just trying to bring you up to speed. I mean, because that would kind of be rude. But I love that concept, and I'm probably going to have to pick your brain later on that. But now that you are in the role, and you've been doing this, I think you said, since almost 2 years, right?
Almost 2 years. Yeah.
So you've been doing it. How do you go about making sure that, I guess, one thing like that you feel like you're doing everything right or as right as possible, but that the people around you who have the eyes on you are seeing the value that you're bringing to them and the organization as a whole?
Yeah, Mary. I mean, I think if we could figure out the exact things, I would be probably a consultant in selling it. But I would say tracking it is going to be key. And obviously, any role, it's going to change what you're going to track, right? But ultimately, you have to be able to track your progress that you're making along kind of the journey of developing the team or developing yourself within role. You need to be able to track the value that you are adding. And that's where, again, it goes back to like, do you understand the historical context of this role? By going back and asking, some of those cross-functional partners, well, what has this role been in the past? You can then demonstrate, what have I done differently and why is this a value add, right? And so it allows you to be able to track that change in value that you have brought to the role. I also think you definitely need to track your own growth. I think this is probably something people don't do enough, is to identify like, where were your strengths and weaknesses? What were your skill sets prior to this role? And what have you grown to better do this role? And then communicate that to leadership. Like, hey, you know what? I recognize this was an area of opportunity for me. I did X, Y, and Z. I do feel like I've grown. Do you agree? Have you seen this of me? And let them, communicate yes or no. Hopefully it's more on the yes side. But then it also shows them that you have invested in yourself to be even better at the role. They already knew you could probably do the role because they put you there, but it just takes you that one level up to be able to communicate not just like the progress you're making, the value, but the growth that you have done within the role. And if you can take all three of those, track it and communicate it, leadership is going to love you.
Well, in a world that seems to be driven by a number KPI, and I'm like, how would you track and evaluate that and then present it to whoever you want to share it with?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of ways. Obviously, with our scientific and communications roles, we can track how many publications are we doing, how many materials are we putting out. the types of materials we're putting out, how many ad hoc requests our cross-functional partners are coming to us saying, you know what, we had all this on the plan, but now we want to add on this, and showing like, hey, we accommodated. That's a value add. Or we accommodated taking that in and took this off of the plate, right? So prioritized and helped kind of our cross-functional members identify what is the appropriate prioritization of the work. So those are some of the numbers. Another way that I like to kind of assess like how are we progressing is I send a survey. I send out a survey to my medical director's offices and I ask them like, where are we doing well? Where do you feel like you need more from us? Show me what's the areas that are most important to you. And then that allows me to kind of sit back and think about, okay, we've added value here. It may not have been enough. Or we need to add value over here because we didn't do enough there. And so that helps me kind of identify areas where I can speak to value add, or areas where I can speak to, I now know how we are going to progress in this area because I've heard from the partners, this is what they need.
Megan's got it all figured out. From her
No,
learning. No, she's got
but I
so
try.
so many good things that I want to put into practice that I've learned from you today. We're getting close to wrapping up the time, Megan. I'm curious. I'm not gonna say try to stump you by any means, but I'm just thinking through this, right? So
Please do.
As a leader, was this your first true leadership role of leading other people?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a medical director, I had a small team, a couple of associate medical directors. So I had a little bit of leadership experience. When I was in MSL, there was a period of time where the team that I was working on, we didn't have a field director.
Okay.
And so I naturally kind of just take those opportunities and step up and try to say, okay, there's this void. Like, how can I, fill that? And so I tend to naturally kind of fill any leadership void that I observe, because I know that without somebody there to kind of support the team, teams are just not as successful. And so it's something that I think I've always sort of naturally done, but it's something that I continue to grow and learn more about, whether it's through kind of leading teams or reading leadership books, or doing different Coursera modules and things.
I like you do a lot of reflections on LinkedIn as well too. So leadership thoughts, always appreciate those. My question that comes from this is, so circling back all the way to the very beginning, right, where your boss identified something in you that gave confidence that that you could do this role that you're in now. Have you had the opportunity, or how have you been able to integrate that into your leadership style with your team? Have you had any experiences to do that yet?
Yeah, I mean, so I am very intentional about my team's development. And so I know what my strengths are. And I try very hard to utilize those as an opportunity, because I do them well, to show my team how to do them well. But similarly, I also show my team where are my opportunities for development, and I try to grow myself there so that way I can level up my team. One of my philosophies, Chad, is like, if I don't level up myself, I can't level up my team. So I try very hard to work on my development, because through that, I'm going to develop them even more. And so I do a lot of activities where I don't want the first time they're doing something to be high stakes. I try to make sure that the first time they're doing a different type of activity or exhibiting a skill, that it's in a practice environment. And so I'm very intentional about creating a development series for my team to go through as a journey across the year, to get that skill or practice that particular activity ahead of having to do it for real.
Mary, that could be something we have another follow-up conversation on and really dig into, Megan. I'd love to learn more about how you've structured that, and I think that'd be maybe another conversation for another day. Megan, anything that you want to leave this conversation with for our listeners? Any additional thoughts?
I think have more faith in yourself. I think most often we question, why was I put here? Was I really put in the right spot? Have more faith. You probably have more abilities than you give yourself credit for, and you're probably better prepared to handle it than you expect. And so give yourself a little grace, take a breath, it'll be okay, and then just plan to move forward.
You heard it here, folks. She's a future VP in our wings here. I can definitely sense it. So, Megan, thanks so much for taking time to share some of your thoughts, your experiences, your thought process. Lots of great application here for really leaders at any level. Really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Oh, appreciate you both. I enjoyed chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, listeners, for joining another casual conversation at MSLE Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. Remember, leaders don't develop in isolation. We learn from one another. Until next time, learn and lead well.
And expect the unexpected.
And expect the unexpected.
Very good job.